Now, gosh, didn't expect that to startle me so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our March Viz and Tell. So this month is a community show and tell. My name is Nagin Agasibek. I'm one of the fellows here at Visualizing the Future. I'm also a data visualization librarian over at the University of Washington Libraries. On this call, I see Angela and Justin here. Maybe Andy will join us later. They are the PIs of the Visualizing the Future IMLS grant. I'm sure there are other fellows here. I see Joe's here. Matt will be presenting later is here. So for this month's Viz and Tell, I'll be joined here by Justin, who we've all gotten to know already. And Justin is one of, again, the PIs on the grant and is a visualization librarian at the University of Michigan Libraries. The Visualizing the Future IMLS grant is supporting this discussion series, as well as a range of other projects and activities, all aimed at building community, capacity, and critical approaches to an instructional and research agenda for library professionals who do data visualization. Say that 5 times fast. I think most everyone here is familiar with the grant, but if anyone is new, I'm putting the link to our website in the chat. And a quick plug for those of you who are on our mailing list, and if you're not on the mailing list yet and you want to be, I'm putting that in the chat as well. Oops. Our April Viz and Tell will be led by Angela and David, who's another fellow, and will survey new or uncommon Python packages or R libraries. So stay tuned for more information. So first things first, let's see, we have this Google document. Justin shared this earlier. In case you haven't seen it, these are the live notes. We would love for everyone to try and use it to share questions or comments, discussion points, any resources. Thanks, Angela. Any resources as we go through the discussion. We'll also take questions through chat and try to moderate any hands that go up. It's a smaller group than last time, so hopefully we'll be able to catch all of your questions. But if not, please feel free to put it in chat again or reach out to one of us directly. If you want to vote up any questions in the document, just put a +1 or something at the end of it, and we'll try to get to the ones that have the highest votes first. There will be some points where we might open everything up for like an open discussion, so just please be mindful of providing space for everyone to talk. And finally, I'm excited to present our speakers for this session, Emma Slayton and Matthew Sisk. So Emma Slayton is a data curation, visualization, and GIS specialist at Carnegie Mellon University Libraries. She obtained an MPhil from the University of Oxford in 2013 and completed her PhD at the Faculty of Archaeology, Leiden University in 2018. Her current work centers around improving and supporting digital literacy efforts, as well as studying early seafaring routes in the Caribbean using modern climate data, and her ORCID is in our live notes. Matthew Sisk is a spatial data specialist and geographic information systems librarian based in Notre Dame's Navarre Family Center for Digital Scholarship. He received his PhD in Paleolithic archaeology from Stony Brook University in 2011 and has worked extensively in GIS-based archaeology and ecological modeling. His current research focuses on human-environment interactions and the spatial scale environmental toxins. So really awesome work, and we're excited to hear from them. So I'm gonna shut up now and pass it over to Emma to present.
Also realizing I should unmute myself. And how fantastic that today we really have strong representation from climate-based archaeologists who also transitioned into GIS librarians. This is fantastic. So yeah, as Nagin said, my name is Emma. I work at Carnegie Mellon University Libraries. And one of my passion areas is really improving knowledge about how to work with data and how to communicate data, which very strongly rests on creating data visualization, literacy programs, and pedagogy to support our students. And the reason why I got very interested in this type of approach is because I would talk to students and they would have these very set ideas about, oh yeah, I have this data set and I'm going to make a graph and it's going to be awesome. I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to do that? And they would not have a very strong answer for me, either in terms of, how they were planning to build it, or what kind of styles they were using and why they were going to make those choices, right? So really hitting back to, as we are thinking through data literacies, why people were making the choices they were was not something being heavily considered. And so I really wanted to make sure that when people not only were creating their own graphs, that they would be following these guidelines of clear communication, and that they would be able to read graphs effectively to also be able to process information important to their research. So part of that is through general data visualization education strategies at CMU libraries, which I'll run through very briefly. So those include following some core principles, which focus on making sure that we're thinking about information skills and knowledge. So not just building the how-to guide, but the knowledge of how, and thinking through that. And a deep emphasis on creating core literacies from our first year undergraduates through our principal investigators, because when we think about any kind of digital literacy, data visualization literacy, spatial literacy, it really comes down to the fact that we're thinking about a step ladder of being able to interact with, use, analyze, understand some aspects that come out of the data world, the digital world. And that doesn't necessarily map on to where you are in your first year of university or as a principal investigator. You could still be on that first rung of the ladder. So trying to figure out how we can create materials that not only cross processes of where you are in your academic career, but also interdisciplinary focuses. And one of the fantastic things about being in a library, which I'm sure many of you have experienced, is that we are kind of this hub on a wheel of spokes that we can bring people in to have these cross-disciplinary discussions. But it can also create some challenges in terms of working with people with different backgrounds. One example is I currently teach a course, and we have a lot of interesting conversations between our humanities students who are more focused on perhaps what we could consider qualitative data, and our hard science students who are very much quantitatively focused. So working together in the libraries allows us to massage those conversations and allow people to come out with a more holistic understanding of data and how visualizations can work across disciplinary topics. We're also very into experimental and applied learning. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but really trying to focus on hands-on ways for students and faculty to interact with building these core literacies around data visualization. So it's not just about a lecture, it's about actual engagement. Some of our goals is to increase the impact of our libraries. For those of you unfamiliar with CMU, sometimes I describe us as a fiefdom, because all of our departments are so separate. And I know everyone says that at every university, and it could be my own personal bias, but I really think CMU is plagued by this problem, particularly because our library was actually only started when Carnegie Technical and the Mellon School for Technology merged in the 60s, 50s. So our library has not existed as long as the university. So we have really been, I think, working at a deficit to try to promote our services to students ever since. We really want to also then focus on helping our students really develop those, again, core data visualization literacies, and also fluency across disciplines. So if that means bringing them to us or going to them, how can we really meet students where they are to work with these issues? And we also want to define data literacy needs. So I'm working right now on a core project to actually do some surveying of our students and faculty to ask, do you know what data visualization is? And if so, what is it to you in your discipline or to you as a person? How would you like to learn more about it? And what do you not know you don't know? Kind of questions, because there's really a lot of groundwork that can be made in defining data literacy, even at a national level, I think, as well. And we also want to be able to guide students into do some of the technical creation as well, because that is most of what they want to learn. We just need to trick them into learning the data literacy at the same time. So our current offerings include workshops, course-related instruction, which involves both university librarians going into courses, going into departments, to meet students where they are, and then also offering full courses to the libraries as well. We have one that follows the data lifecycle. I'm so glad I can say that because I'm among librarians. I don't have to define what it is. And then also one that takes people through spatial storytelling. So working through the knowledge of building spatial literacies and data visualization literacies in order for people to communicate information about space. And in both of these courses and in our workshops, we really try to focus on finding issues that students are passionate about. So we have workshops that focus on data viz, but for gerrymandering, or data viz, but highlighting Black archives, or letting students pick their own projects of interest. So one of the courses I just finished, and our students talked about everything from redlining to the climate impacts on the Arctic because of climate change. So having students really meet their interests in this way helps them learn these visualization cues. And we also do, standard consultations and provide online materials as well. So talking about more of the specific building of these workshops, we really are trying to think of them, and by we, I also mean myself, are trying to build in our own field. So for me, that's data visualization workshops, which I kind of have control over at CMU libraries, stepped workshops, right? So we're thinking about building literacies, again, when I mentioned in that step ladder approach, right? So meeting people where they are from the beginning to more advanced steps. And that is also, again, focusing on people getting in there and drawing maps, dissecting maps, working with data to create something in one session, to really focus on building the trial and error into a place where they feel comfortable asking questions, particularly as librarians are a third space. So we're not grading them, we're not judging them, we're just helping them. So it allows them to ask more questions than I find they would typically in a course as well. And that helps us encourage long-term student engagement, not only with us at the libraries, but with the core content of developing these data literacy skills. So the following slides are just some examples of what I work on with my course. So I talk about the differences between design and functionality. So what is the form that your graph is taking? And having students first start out dissecting this lovely graph from Costlin's work in 2006, which was an original version suggestion for the nutritional facts on the back of a pack of potato chips, for example. So I have my students start by dissecting what they like, what they don't like about the graph on the left, what elements speak out to them, what is hard to notice, what are the general issues in reading it, and what kind of communication they think the author is getting at. Because having them apply those questions to this graph helps them think about how to apply it to their own, and helps us do later when we work into graph construction, what elements they need to include. And then of course, showing the finalized version on the left of this nutritional table just shows them that sometimes simpler is easier. And what we really need to think about is talking about audience engagement and audience understanding. So again, hoping to curb some of that. I'm going to over design for clickbait and not get into the mean design. We also look at some of these more complex graphs like this, again, asking those same questions we applied to the overdone nutritional visualization we saw on the last slide, but focusing also on how people from different audiences, different cultural perspectives might read this graph. I wanted to include this example as I actually had one student bring up the point in a workshop that this graph read to them as being potentially racially insensitive because of the way that it uses color and the association between color and place in this graph. So by allowing students that opportunity to really critically engage and come up with their own issues that they find in this graph, it also allows for that cross-disciplinary, cross-cultural perspectives to evolve in sessions as well. And I'm sure a lot of my white students learned in that session about what they need to think about in speaking to different audiences. So it's always nice to let students bring their own perspective to this as well. And as well as pointing out all of the little form versus function issues in this graph. As part of these workshops, we also or classes, we can also do extended learning evaluations. And in one of our course, we work on doing evolving data management plans that connect to space analysis, and visualization. And this, we usually assign a particular data set. The student ended up working with police data in Pittsburgh, which we like to use because it shows that, hey, look, there are a lot of errors here. Let's think about that, what can institutionally mean. in terms of the connection with our students, which is something they very much respond to. And by working with them over weeks, by encouraging this long-term engagement, either through a course or through continually offering workshops on the same topic. So we do something called the thematic series, where we have, for example, 8 workshops on how to visualize different ways, how to analyze data different ways, but all focused on gerrymandering, allowing students to relate all the different types of analysis you can do to one topic, much like you would do in a research project. It helps them give this through line to their analysis, this through line to how they're communicating information visually, which helps them think of new ways to apply that in their own research. So it's been very valuable in that way. We also want to include, I'll just mention briefly, I know I'm probably talking a bit over, extended learning sessions and building departmental buy-in. So I've mentioned already a bit about meeting universities where they are, and usually making the trek from my library to their department is one of the best ways to get departmental buy-in. But we also want to figure out about other ways we can engage with them. And part of that has been hitting on some extended learning sessions. So that is by creating joint courses. So that the slide that I just showed, where we worked through a data management plan and analysis of one assigned data set over time that they would then visualize and communicate to an audience, was part of this Discovering Data Universe course, where we did go through walking students through every stage of the data lifecycle. And we actually ended up developing that course as kind of a mission assignment from the statistics department, where they're finding not a lot of students are familiar with data visualization or basically data understanding when they enter statistics. So how can we create courses through the library that bring students up to speed so that we can then send them off to other departments? And particularly around data visualization, one of the things Carnegie Mellon is noticing is that we really need to step up our game in helping our students be able to communicate those narratives. And one of the strongest ways that we can help them do that is through data visualization, because the corporations who end up hiring our students are seeing that this is a skill area that they're not necessarily as developed as they could be. And because my main goal in helping students is to ensure that they're being not educated for the 4 years that I have them, but for their entire lives, not only in becoming engaged data citizens or globally engaged data citizens, but also being able to find work. I want my students to have success. We also do carpentries, which I'm sure many of you are also familiar with, but we're working on how can we adapt the carpentries model for our own purposes? Can we get departmental buy-in? Because one of the things that I've been asked by at least 3 different departments is, can I teach all of their freshmen R? And the answer to that question is no, because I am one person and cloning has not yet been developed at my institution, but who knows with our DARPA funding what might happen. But really, in that sense, it's how do we work with departments to figure out what they need in terms of data visualization education over a long haul, and build core curriculum that they can either offer themselves or that we can turn into an online asynchronous course. And that can work too with shared cost structures as well, because obviously libraries aren't always as well funded as some of the departments who would want this. I'm thinking of business and statistics in particular. So it's how we can really then leverage that for more resources on our end, either for staff or for other purposes. And that can also lead to adapting existing workshops. And that could, exactly what I've been talking about. We also have this thing called micro courses, which are 15-hour courses that are credit bearing. So how can we also work with students to get them credit? Is that a certificate? Is that an acknowledgement of skills for employers? Is that credit towards their classes? How can we make these courses valuable to them so that they end up wanting to engage with these data visualization literacies? How can we bring them in? And that also too thinks about developing content with the community. How do we let students work with nonprofits, work with other organizations in the Pittsburgh area to engage in more of these cross-community conversations around visualization needs as well, all with a focus on long-term skill building. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you all for listening. I hope it was at least mildly interesting on this Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was really interesting, and I have a lot to think about now in my own work. So we have about 8 minutes for questions. So If you have any questions, again, feel free to use that document with the live notes or throw it in the chat or use a Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions.
I do want to make a comment while people are composing their questions to Matt's comment. I think, yes, all GA List librarians are secretly archaeologists or geographers. But yeah, definitely many of us are archaeologists, and I love meeting them on the call. And how great that we both work with climate data as well. Should I be looking at the live document for questions, or?
It's all good. I'm actually just waiting for some people to finish writing their questions. I know their questions, so I will just read them out loud for you.
No worries.
You don't have to jump back and forth.
It's just it's been a year and I'm still getting used to Zoom presentations.
It seems like they don't ever get easier, do they?
Nope. At least it's one way to keep the pandemic interesting.
Yeah. Well, while they're writing, okay, there we go. We have a question from Angela who says, "Oh, you're welcome to read it out too." No, sorry, go for it.
No, this is brain dump, so we don't have to spend time on this. This is super well tied to your presentation. It's just that you started me thinking on this issue, and so the idea of incentivizing ethical and literacy-based instruction, either for students or for others, I think is fascinating, and I would love to see the libraries be able to take a little bit more of an active role in this. So one thing it brought up for me is this idea that as a discipline professionalizes, you begin to get kind of codes of ethics and standards that people actually have to kind of, you have things like a bar exam or, the medical boards where people have to prove that they know how to behave ethically. And that keeps cycling in my mind. Like, when are we going to get to that in even computer science, much less data visualization, and whether there's a role for libraries in that?
Well, I think there definitely is a role for libraries in creating a standard of data visualization. And one of the reasons I think about that is that no one is particularly dealing with that topic. Mostly when I see in disciplines is focusing on the creation and the promotion of the use of these tools as how to understand it from within the disciplinary lens. But there has not yet been that strong sense of how do we create and measure, because metrics in libraries is always the bash head against wall moment, but how do you measure people you only see for one-off sessions, right? So I think coming to libraries though and having a space where we are interdisciplinary, we are also hopefully, and I think I have seen this, tying more into issues of social justice, issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion that not necessarily covered in departments because they're more focused again on the training for the discipline, which is, their prerogative and I think very important as well. But libraries as this third space can take up that area of training in ethics and literacies in empathies. And being able to incentivize students to return to us. So whether that's through a certificate, I'm happy to sign a piece of paper for whatever that means for students to get acknowledgement for the work that they've put in, or I think through more allowing librarians to take on these core teaching moments. So right now we're working primarily with departments, but we are talking about getting our own course numbers, being able to issue those standards. And I know that already exists at some libraries, which is fantastic, but we also need to think too about how can we offer short courses. How do we meet students? Is that through asynchronous learning? Is that through, synchronous in the evenings, finding an afternoon, hosting a session over several months? And these are still things to develop, but if we can allow students to get some kind of credit for the work that they're doing, it will help them come back, I think. And that is really the best way to have us be a center for these literacies, which really is just extending from information literacies, which we've been obsessed with since forever. So it helps in that way.
Awesome, thank you. And there are so many good questions coming in now, and I know you only have
I can stay. I mean, I don't want to eat into Matt's time, but
We've built in about 25 for each of y'all, so there's still time, but at any point if you need to leave. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I didn't build in 25 for me. So this is an awesome conversation. I'd love to continue just talking about this.
Great.
Well, I'll maybe pull out a question that we had in the chat because it got a +1 in the chat. So what best practices can you speak about for helping students know about the services you provide? I've run into this situation where students tell me, I never knew this was here quite frequently. And Joe says, ooh, same question as Devin here. What outreach do you do?
Yeah, and I wish I could say that I have not encountered that question recently, but that's not the case. I was actually just in a meeting with our vice provost for education. I had no idea that you offered all of these services. And I'm like, that is a problem. So I think for us, it's a measure of a lot of different things. I find that, and this is just my own personal experience, I work with a lot of incredible people at the libraries. But those people are not able to mind control other people at our university. So even our liaisons who have relationships with departments, it's not like they can go to their constituents and guarantee that an email is going to get out. And we also don't have access to some of our core university lit reviews, news journal thingies, whatever those names are, where we send out information through that way. So a lot of the tacks that I've been taking is by one, meeting students where they are. So making sure that I can contact different departments, usually through their education team for either undergraduate or graduate, and letting them know that I offer bespoke departmental focused workshops, which are really more focused on general data literacy, but changing a little bit of the data for the department. And that helps me get in front of students. And once you can get in front of students, I find that meeting students in departments, they're much easier for them to reach out to me because they've already seen how it applies in their discipline. So that's one way. The second way is by reaching out to new faculty. So whenever there are new hires, sometimes I can send them a welcome email. Sometimes I find them at faculty drinks, or I try to attend when I can workshops or lecture series in other departments, so that I can actually, engage with people again where they are in their discipline. And that helps them see the application for their work. And then it's hoping for word of mouth. It's hoping for the ability to do that. In addition to that, something that I'm currently developing now with some collaborators at my library is what we're calling a services menu, which is something that we can have as a PDF that we send out in emails, but more importantly to new faculty, that focuses on how faculty can use us to come in and teach their students. And that's through in-course instruction, that's through supporting workshops that we can offer in conjunction with courses. So I have done that where I will say, hey, you want to focus on R and you can't really talk about data visualization in R, but I can teach that. Why don't you just have your students be offered extra credit to come to my workshop? And we can have that work relationship together where you don't have to take time in class. I can get students in seats. And the menu will help. It will tell them, how often a semester can I as a person actually physically offer these things, because we don't want to overpromise. We want to make sure that we protect library time. But also then let them know, like, here's an example of how we can work in your content to our workshop. Here's, some videos that you might be able to play in your class or assign as asynchronous extra credit content. So creating that menu, hopefully we can start handing that out soon. And then it is also through the creation of that thematic workshop series I was talking about. So by picking themes that are of interest to faculty and of interest to students, is a really helpful way to get knowledge out there. So I'll also be able to, for example, with the gerrymandering sessions that we had, I went directly to public policy, I went directly to the maths department, and I invited those faculty to also give workshop lectures as well as part of a library series. And that brings students into our realm, but it also gives faculty who, even if they say, oh, I can't participate, it lets them know that we're here and what kind of content we're offering, and that we find their work valuable as well. So those are just some of the methods that I've taken. I'm sure it's not a holistic list because gosh knows we need every method available, but yeah.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a second. But yeah, those are amazing ideas. And the extra credit thing is just genius. So yeah, I love that idea. Maybe time for one more question. There are so many good ones. I'm going to go to one that was put in kind of earlier on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll just put my email in the chat, although I think it's also on the screen. If your question does not get answered, feel free to email me your question and I will write you a personalized response. Great.
Thank you so much. That's super
Yeah.
generous. I'm going to put it underneath your speaker bio. Oh, thanks, Justin. Sorry. So yeah, it's under the speaker bio for anyone who wants to send their question. So the question I think was here a little earlier was when you said you do workshops based on different topics that students are interested in, do you mean that each workshop is a different theme or that you use different examples within one workshop? For example, do you have a data visualization workshop that focuses on racial inequality and a data visualization workshop on climate issues, etc.?
Okay, that is a great question. So that was, I think, related to the thematic series, which I just spoke a bit about. So it's a great transition. So the idea from that was that if we could find a core central theme that our students would be interested in, like, we would just beat it to death now, gerrymandering, that we could then host several individual workshops like data visualization best practices, how to data visualize, text mining, geospatial analysis, data management, and how the gerrymandering can affect your community and how to get involved in the census. And a couple other workshops that we invited also a nonprofit organization called Draw the Lines PA, which is also another way that works with using their own special GIS tools to design maps that teach about gerrymandering. So it was also from a visualization point of view. So the idea is that we pick a central theme and showcase how we can apply those different concepts, those different types of tools to the same theme, like you would try to do if you're thinking through a research project as a student. And it also encourages repeat attendance because it feels like it's part of a series. So we can have more time with students to hammer home some of these data visualization best practices, or recommended practices, I should say, elements. I love the idea of having, for lack of a better word, zeitgeisty topics like social justice, climate change, workshops on their own as well. And that's something that I've kind of, I think, done more from a disciplinary aspect, but I love the idea of doing that as one-off workshops. I think that would be fantastic. But no, the series is just, this year our series was on, this is the worst name ever, highlighting data from or collected by underrepresented communities. So not easy to write on a postcard. And that really helped too, because we were able to bring in researchers from several departments. We were able to bring in experts from the libraries who work on tool training to have conversations around that topic. And it actually helped a lot, I think, with bringing people in. Yeah, I'm hoping to publish on the thematic series concept soon. It's one of the multiple things I'm trying to write about. So hopefully out in a library journal near you before the end of the year. I'll make, if I tell you guys that, then it really has to happen. So we'll say it out loud.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Angela.
I was just gonna say, you've got some guaranteed citations here.
Awesome.
Well,
then definitely it has to happen, right? And I think too, and that just also allows us as librarians to play off of our interests as well, and makes this conversation around data literacy a bit more exciting for us, because there's only so many times you can teach, hi, here are the basics. So excited to teach again the basics. I mean, it is different every time, and the students do bring new concepts to it, but I think it does add a little bit more energy in having you also having to replan workshops that you teach. And the more often that you redesign content, the more you rethink about it and critically engage with the aspects within it. So it also helps me maintain my own literacies.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. I think I'm looking forward to all this, and we'll probably be emailing you too. So
Yeah, please do. I'm always happy to answer questions, and I know that you guys are also working on incredibly interesting stuff. So I would love to learn more about your work as well.
Thanks, and thanks so much for speaking and sharing all that with us and answering questions and being willing to take even more questions. I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I think that was amazing, and I have a lot to follow up on now. So yeah, thank you so much, Emma. And I think now we're ready to switch over to Matt if you're ready. Please let me know if you need anything.
No, and I have everything I need, which is to say that I did not prepare very much. I think what I wanted to talk about today is kind of a somewhat of a work in progress piece, but also a little bit of a discussion of what happens when you get that data visualization request that makes you feel a little bit icky about doing it, and some strategies that we've been able to do to sort of deal with that. The last thing that you want to do when you're actively trying to spin up a center or when you're trying to build a service is to start saying no left and right because you don't want to have the hard conversation. And the one that I'm going to talk about most saliently here is one that came to us sort of in the beginning, the very beginning of 2020, like right before everything went crazy. And it was all sort of this fallout from a U.S. governmental like mandate or request that we start looking into undue foreign influence in university research. Basically finding out places where the university funders or publications or other things might have a little bit more influence from foreign actors than they wanted them to. The general reading on all of this was that this was largely because of Chinese tech companies and the fight that our then president was having with some of the Chinese tech companies. So we pretty quickly afterwards, the University of Notre Dame had a committee that was going to look at this, and they realized they had no way to quantify this based off of what they had on hand. But someone picked out pretty quickly that the library did. That we could find out cases where individuals had been publishing with foreign citizens and tell them what departments they might want to look more closely at and things like that. And so they came to us, and it was very quick that we were like, oh, we're not exactly cool with this idea, but what do? We don't want to say no to the Office of Research on campus because that's basically going to get, it's burning a bridge that we weren't comfortable wanting to do. So we decided that we could do this by using the Scopus API to pull down unique identifiers for all of the people that were affiliated with Notre Dame and then all of their co-authors, and working off of it that way. And we were happy to do it, but we decided that because we were making the visualizations, we weren't going to put undue foreign influence anywhere on there. And what we ended up with, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen briefly. Is we built something in R that went through and pulled all of this stuff, pulled the text files out from Scopus, reclassified everything, and allowed it so that they could start looking at individual departments throughout the data set. There's a little bit of tweaking and things like that, renaming countries for modern names, things along those lines, building all sorts of stuff. And what we decided was instead of calling it undue foreign influence, we were going to call it something more like this. And build in a tool that was talking essentially about the global connectedness of Notre Dame research instead of talking about the undue foreign influence on research. Sorry, I know that my Zoom controls are probably in the way, so I'm just going to try to move those around a little bit. And what it pulls from Scopus periodically to get this re-updated off of command line things, and essentially it's a way for the researchers to in the Office of Research. Oh, Thanks, Joe. That's awesome. I didn't realize that there was a shortcut to be able to do that. That will save me a tremendous amount of time with teaching. Where we can see for particular departments what the number of domestic co-authors are, what the number of co-authors from various institutions that fall within the borders of other countries. They seem to think that this was really, really useful to be able to see that science is largely with UK researchers, or majority of the preponderance. Engineering is a little bit more with China. Arts and letters, similar. Some of these have places where there is less of a tradition of co-authored publications. And then we decided, Keough is our School of Global Affairs. It's brand new, so there's really there's very little in there. And then we decided to put the library faculty in as well, though we were not asked for it, which then turned out to be slightly embarrassing as far as the number of co-authors we were doing. The data set goes back to 2000, because they were really only interested in recent things. What has happened since then is this did kind of change the discussion a little bit. It did kind of change it on that end where they weren't necessarily asking us about foreign influence anymore. So even a little bit of simple rebranding and creating these kinds of things. We also did static figures that they could drop in that left the words off and put it the way we wanted to. And really we're trying to stress throughout the whole process that instead of dealing with something that is, foreign influence, we're talking about the connectedness of our researchers and the fact that we are working in a lot of different places. And that, although I did just get an email this morning that says that the committee is still live and they're still looking at these cases, it's switched it away from publications and into some other directions, which I think is, if that's what you're looking for, it's not the cases where someone's publishing with someone in another country. It's the cases where there's something that isn't being published or is a funding issue or something like that. So it was a good way for us to be able to kind of take something that seemed like a negative request and reshape the discussion into something that was a little bit more productive for that committee to go off on. We kind of felt good about it at the end as well. Like we felt like we were bringing something to them. The Office of Research seemed to think that this was a good outcome. They keep asking us for updates and additional schools to be added and things like that. So I think it's being used sort of outside of the confines of let's find all the bad actors on campus and into something a little bit more positive. If anyone's interested in technical specifics, it was all built in RShiny. There's just a direct pull from the Scopus API that requires some authentication. That was done separately just because we had a postdoc work on it. So that gets updated and then the text files get run periodically. Not trivial to set up, but not anything that's particularly difficult. The code should all be up somewhere, but I'm happy to share it if anyone's interested as well. Again, I don't have any really awesome pedagogical outbreak or topics and things like that the way that Emma did. But hopefully this is something that people can sort of take away and think about as an example of ways to reframe these sort of troublesome, icky questions that occasionally come in.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, that is a really thoughtful reframing of what I see what you mean now by an icky question. So yeah, definitely the right description. So we have about 10-15 minutes left for questions. So I'll just go ahead and get started from the notes document. So this question, Angela, did you want to say more or do you want me to just...
Yeah, I asked it, or I was curious about your thoughts on choropleth versus proportional symbol. I mean, especially if we're worried about like overemphasis of certain countries, the size of those countries certainly has an impact on that. So I wonder if you debated that.
We did not debate it particularly much because the question we were asked was to give the number, not the number scaled for population. Otherwise, I think you're completely right that if we put area in, so if anyone's not a map nerd, a choropleth is going to essentially scale it to the size of area or population or something like that. So you're not seeing China being bigger means that it's overemphasized versus the UK. We definitely did not think about it as deeply as we should have, because I think you're right. I think that it does tend to overemphasize
It's just
particular.
like, whoa, Russia, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or heaven forbid someone publishes in Greenland on one of these Google base map projections. But it's just one of those cases where it just didn't, because the question we were asked was pretty specific. We went with exactly what we were given.
Awesome, thanks. There's a lot to think about with that one, and
Yeah.
it hadn't occurred to me. So thanks for asking that, Angela. I'll ask you the question that we have in the chat that just popped up. So along these lines, what ways do you set up your exit strategy for these icky projects? I had one project where I basically quietly exited as soon as I hit the minimum viable product, but that didn't feel great either. Yeah, same, Devin.
Yeah, so it's for this one, because it's a low bar to do much with. There doesn't really need to be a lot of uptake. I don't think we really tried to do an exit strategy on it, and we're really, we're committed to trying to be as well tied to our Office of Research as we can be, just for a whole number of different reasons. Other cases where that's happened, I'm trying to think of some other examples where there's been this kind of case, and there's one that it was clearly this chloropleth versus not chloropleth map issue where they really wanted me to do it, and I pushed back as strongly as I could. But then at the end of the day, we're a service center, so I just left our name off of it when it got published and was like, okay, uh, normally we put a little like, we not copyright but produced by or something like that on the images. And that was, I just never had that conversation on that one. That doesn't necessarily make it right. I mean, it's still out there as like a kind of biased thing. But I feel like that's, at least in some ways, part of the peer review process, is to catch those kinds of things. And it may not be after having the conversation and doing what I felt like was my due diligence, I would prefer that it had gone differently, but the fact that it didn't doesn't keep me up at night.
Yeah, thanks for
It's
tackling
designed by not
what
us. Yeah, good job.
yeah, that's such a hard question. And I didn't
Mhm.
think I would run into it as often as I tend to. So yeah, thanks for sharing. The next question we have, well, someone would love to get their hands on your R script or anonymized snippets. So there's that note. Let's see. So this question's from Justin. I can read it out, Justin, or if you'd rather like ask it. Yeah.
Sure, I can try to ask it maybe a little more clearly than I typed. But this kind of thanks for sharing this. This is really interesting. And there's a related issue that I think we tend to run in maybe a little bit more in our office. And I'm curious, if you think that your experience with this applies, or if you have any other thoughts about it. And that's the instance where someone is doing something methodologically questionable, not necessarily like ethically questionable, but we oftentimes see it when a grad student or even an undergrad through our undergraduate research opportunity program is sent to like carry out some sub part of a larger research project. And it just feels like someone is doing something and then interpreting the results of that. They're bringing in data that doesn't say what they think it does, or they're applying some sort of statistical test, or even mapping something using chloropleth when maybe they should be using something else. And how you deal with those situations, I guess, especially in the case where like you're not directly interacting with the PI on the research project, and it's hard to communicate these problems, and maybe even in a situation where you're not necessarily an expert in the methodology at hand, but you just are like, I don't think this is doing what you think it's doing.
Yeah, I think that has happened before, where the poor grad student comes in with the project, and you're like, I'd really prefer that you were not doing it that way. Like, you really shouldn't be doing a GLM on that. You should be doing some sort of a more complicated statistical model on it. Or you're not including these two things are correlated so strongly that like, what do you do about it? The most recent one that we had was, I work a lot on sort of environmental health and environmental toxins, and we had someone come in that had done one of these models, and wasn't really a visualization part; it was much more of an analysis part, because I think that's where you have that deeper conversation. And they had come back with that in our local region, the 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 things that were most strongly correlated with lead poisoning on children were race, income, ethnicity, and education level. And that's the literature supported that as well. Um, but what they're really seeing is income level. And they hadn't put anything in there that was looking at the correlations between the variables, because locally, like a lot of cities, there's a stronger correlation between income level and ethnicity and race, and poverty, than there is, obviously with poverty, than there is uh, outside of those variables. So that actually led to a pretty good conversation with the student that had come in, working on this bigger project, and then with the faculty member as well. I mean, it helped that I actually like work a lot in that field, so that the fact that I was saying it meant something. I think that sounded really egotistical. Sorry. I already knew the faculty member. I guess that's what I mean. Is there was a pre-existing relationship, that we'd worked on things before. But having that conversation in that case worked out pretty well, because then they just changed it a little bit, and it gave them a deeper presentation of what was happening, at the end. But I don't really know if there's a great way to deal with that. Like you're not talking to the person making the decision all the time, and they might be real resident because of all sorts of structural inequities in academia, to go back and say like, this is bad. Some of it, I think, I'd love it. I'd love it if our entire mandate was to like make research better, no matter the cost. But in some cases, it's also our mandate is to help the community, students, faculty, outside the university in some cases, do what they need to do. At least, I mean, that's our mandate. And nobody wants to work with you if you're the research police. Like that's being the library means that we can get into places that we wouldn't normally be able to if all we were doing was telling people that they were making mistakes. So I think that there's some wiggle room there, and there's some due diligence, and like, I want to have this conversation with you, but like, I will still do it if that's what you want. you know I don't know, I feel like that was a half articulated thought there, but I think one of our strengths is that nobody's scared of us. So one of the costs of that strength is that sometimes it's real hard to have those difficult conversations.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, lots to think about with that
Yeah.
question, and also like who feels welcome in libraries as well. I mean, like, I think there's a lot of questions there to unpack. So unfortunately, we only have 4 more minutes. So feel free to keep adding questions. I think we'll have to wrap up now, though. So thanks to everyone who's come, and thank you, Emma, who's not here, and Matt, so much for being willing to share your work with us. It's not always easy to get up in front of other people and talk about your work, so this was really amazing. So as soon as we have the recording and a summary of today's talk, we'll send out a brief email via the listserv. We will probably have registration info, just more information about next month's Viz and Tell as well in that email. In the meantime, yeah, please feel free to continue these conversations through Slack. I know, Matt, you already asked a really great question there about Emma's work. And, reach out to us if you have any comments, questions, concerns. And yeah, thank you all so much.